Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
Peace and blessings be upon you. 141 people were killed and more than 150 others were wounded in an armed attack that took place on Ashura Day in the city of Kuwaita in southwest Pakistan. The Pakistani Information Minister Sheikh Rashid Ahmed confirmed security forces were involved in a firefight that took place among thousands of Shiites as gunfire came from one of the buildings. Security and military forces were deployed in an attempt to protect the area, firing upon the building where the attack came from. After the attack, patrol units remained in Kuwaita. The Palestinian Authority strongly denounced the assassination of journalist Khalil Zaban, an advisor to President Yasser Arafat on human rights issues and civic organizations in Gaza. The Gaza Journalist Association condemned the killing and called for the Palestinian Attorney General to resign for his failure to protect against crimes that threaten to turn into a civil war. The Popular Front held the Palestinian Authority completely responsible for the incident, calling on genuine reforms within the authority to fix the security situation and protect national Palestinian relations. The Palestinian civilian was martyred in the village of Yatta, south of Hebron in the West Bank. Israeli forces raided the village and demolished a home there. Then they fired on the man who was trying to leave his home, which was being surrounded. An Israeli spokesman said that the Palestinian man tried to escape before he was fired upon.
قال الرئيس الأمريكي جورج بوش إن الولايات المتحدة شديدة وقوية عندما يتعلق الأمر بكسر.
The U.S. President George Bush said that the United States is firm and strong in fighting against terrorism. Bush was speaking in Washington for the anniversary of the creation of the Department of Homeland Security. He said that the United States has captured some 2/3 of Al-Qaeda's key leaders and that the rest are being investigated. He confirmed the continuation of his country's policy, whose goal is to find links to suspected terrorist funders. He said that he believes that America freed Iraq and Afghanistan. He continued, saying that Washington's strong position on nuclear weapons led to Libya's decision to give up their weapons. Guy Philippe, the rebel leader in Haiti, declared himself chief of the military and police and the leader of the resistance in his country. With regards to the new commander-in-chief, he said the new acting president should be responsible for security in the country. This came as hundreds of U.S. soldiers arrived at the airport and at the capital port of Port-au-Prince, which has witnessed continued raids since last Sunday. This resulted in the ousting of former Haitian President Jean Aristide, who went into exile in the Central African Republic, claiming that he was forced to leave Haiti in a coup that was organized by the United States government.
اتجهت الأزمة في فنزويلا نحو مزيد من التوتر والاضطرابات.
The crisis in Venezuela expanded with more protests and disturbances. After the protests and daily attacks on government forces in the capital Caracas, the Superior Elections Committee announced that the opposition did not obtain enough genuine signatures for a referendum on whether Hugo Chavez should remain in office. The committee confirmed that the opposition gathered about half of the signatures needed, 2,400,000 signatures. Meanwhile, the opposition says that last year it submitted nearly 3.5 million signatures. More than 1 million more signatures are needed to hold the referendum. Two Turkish F-4 planes crashed, killing 4 pilots. The accident took place in the region of Konya in the center of Turkey. U.S. space scientists announced that new details from the information taken from the planet Mars indicate that the planet could have supported life. American space scientist Steve Squires stated that some areas of Mars, which the American robot Opportunity passed through, may have once been covered in water. In addition, scientists of the U.S. National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA, said that the information that the robot has transmitted to Earth was important, that they examined samples of soil and rocks on Mars.
على الكوكب الأحمر.
This is the end of today's review of the world's news.
Iraq's Governing Council has agreed an interim constitution. A signing ceremony for the document will be held on Wednesday after the observance of Ashura, a Shia Muslim festival marking the martyrdom of Imam Hussein, a grandson of the Prophet Muhammad. The constitution is a key step in Washington's plan to hand sovereignty back to Iraqis by June the 30th.
Iraq's Governing Council agreed unanimously on Monday on the law to administer the country in the transitional period.
This is a great day in the history of Iraq, an unforgettable day. It is in fact a unique day, perhaps in the history of the whole region. We have adopted unanimously an instrument, the law for the administration of the Iraqi state during the transitional period.
Council member Adnan al-Bachati also said the law included a bill on human rights, which he described as unprecedented. The agreement on the law is a key step in Washington's plan to hand sovereignty back to Iraqis by June 30. The 25-member Iraqi Governing Council missed a February 28th deadline to strike a deal over the interim constitution because of deep divisions over the role of Islam. Officials and participants in the talks said the law recognized Islam as Iraq's official religion and said it would be a source of legislation, but not the primary source. A senior coalition official said the compromise strikes the right balance between the Islamic identity of most Iraqis and the need to enshrine freedom of religion and freedom of speech. The official said the constitution also approved a federal structure for Iraq. A signing ceremony will be held on Wednesday after the observance of Ashura, a Shiite Muslim festival marking the martyrdom 1300 years ago of Imam Hussein, a grandson of the Prophet Muhammad. About 1 million gathered in Karbala on Monday for the 10-day festival. Police and Polish soldiers have set up checkpoints on roads leading up to Karbala, thoroughly searching cars and pedestrians and setting up a 20-kilometer cordon. The city has been off-limits to most vehicles for more than a week. The Ashura festival was banned by deposed Iraqi leader Saddam Hussein. The ceremony culminates on Tuesday when more than 2 million people, including at least 100,000 Iranians, are expected to gather in the city. Chris Manders, Dubai Television.
The Iraqi Interim Governing Council declared 3 days of mourning in honor of the victims who lost their lives in Baghdad and Karbala. More than 143 people were killed and about 500 others were wounded in the explosions. Meanwhile, the signing of the temporary Iraqi constitution has been delayed. In Karbala alone, 85 people were killed and 240 others were wounded during a chain of explosions that rattled the city while the Shiites were celebrating the day of Ashura.
A number of people were either killed or wounded during a chain of explosions that shook the city of Karbala, where a day of Ashura was being celebrated. An overwhelming feeling of fear overcame the massive crowd of people, leading to a stampede. The ambulances rushed to the area, while the Iraqi police set up security blocks and closed all roads leading to the city. The Iraqi public believes that these operations aim at destabilizing security and creating strife on the Iraqi front. The public blames foreign forces for these attacks.
All Muslims condemn this operation whether they show it or not. The perpetrators will not divide the Shiite and Sunnis.
The Husseini Hospital and the city's local clinics are now overflowing with the injured and the killed. Religious leaders urged citizens and hospital visitors to donate blood. The coalition forces announced that they are cooperating with the Iraqi police to crack down on the bombers. Meanwhile, the spokesman for Ali Sistani's office, Ahmed Safi, is blaming the coalition forces for these operations because they are the ones responsible for maintaining security in Iraq. Safi called for joining efforts and preserving the national unity. Security was stepped up, in addition to security measures taken by the Iraqi police in anticipation for any terrorist attack. The Iraqi militia notably assisted in stepping up security efforts by setting up checkpoints in the city. These measures, however, did not affect the Ashura festivities. The Shias celebrated all the ceremonies of that day, after being banned from doing so for more than 35 years. Here, and at a specified time, beginning on the 10th day of the month of Muharram, the Shi'is hit their heads lightly with swords. Hours later, they engage in a ritual called a Rakda, where people run toward Imam Hussein's shrine. The commemorations of the Ashura this year were disturbed by the operations that shook Karbala. Thus, security remains the main concern in Iraq. Mustafa Al-Attoum, Abu Dhabi Television, Karbala.
His Majesty the King has held talks with British Prime Minister Tony Blair at 10 Downing Street in London, where he arrived from Berlin. The visits are part of the King's tour of European capitals, which also include Dublin and Paris, to drum up international support for efforts designed to put an end to violence in the Palestinian territories and reinvigorate the stalled peace process. King Abdullah said after the talks attended by top-ranking Jordanian and British officials that Britain, as part of the European Union and the world community at large, was seeking to fulfill the hope of a better future for Palestinians and Israelis. His Majesty and Blair condemned deadly attacks in the Iraqi cities of Karbala and Baghdad and pledged to do what they could to help restoration of Iraq's stability and sovereignty.
Obviously, we're very delighted to be back here in London and for the warm hospitality that you've shown us, but also for the in-depth discussions and the hopes that we both share for a far better Middle East. We went into some depth, obviously, on the Israeli-Palestinian issue, and again, England, as part of the European and the international community, is steadfast in looking to bring a better hope and better light to both Israelis and Palestinians, and we're very grateful for your particular involvement in very difficult times to try and move the process forward. Iraq is obviously of tremendous concern to all of us in the Middle East, and again, the Prime Minister has been an advocate of moving Iraqi society forward, giving them the hope that they sooner rather than later will be able to guide their own future. And on those two issues, Jordan and Britain have seen eye to eye and will continue to work tirelessly together to make the Middle East a better place. Obviously, we are shocked, dismayed at the heinous crime that was committed today in Iraq. This is just another element of extremism, either under the umbrella of Al-Qaeda or its affiliates. We've seen that signature before, where they've tried to create the struggle between East and West to try and take on not only the Sunnis inside the Islamic world, but as we've seen today, targeting innocent Shia to try and create a struggle inside of Islam. And all of us here in the international community will not allow that to happen. We will stand steadfast with those that have lost their lives today in Iraq, and we will give the support to Shias and Sunnis to hopefully rise above the difficulties that are posed by these extremists. And we will do our utmost in Jordan, in coordination with Britain and other countries, to make sure that the terrorists do not win the day, that there will be a hope not only for the future of Iraq, but for all of us in the Middle East.
The purpose of those people who have killed them in such a cruel and evil way is to try and set the different religious communities in Iraq against each other, to destroy the progress in Iraq, to cause the maximum amount of dissent and division and hatred when the vast majority of people in Iraq want to build an Iraq that is stable and free and prosperous and democratic for the future. And the fact that this happens in a week where there has been a remarkable agreement on a new constitution, a new way forward for Iraq, in which all the different elements work together, is an indication of how stark is the difference now between the Iraqis themselves, those from other countries such as Britain and America and others who are trying to help them rebuild their country, make it a stable and democratic, free and prosperous country, all of us on the one hand, and that small, but I'm afraid highly active group of terrorists.
Israeli forces have killed an unarmed Palestinian during a West Bank swoop. Military sources said the 27-year-old victim was shot dead by troops who rolled into Yatta village outside of the city of Hebron before dawn. They claimed the man was killed after he tried to flee and ignored orders to stop, but no weapons were found on him. The shooting came as hundreds of mourners attended the funeral of Khalil al-Zibn, a journalist and prominent advisor to Palestinian President Yasser Arafat, killed by gunmen in Gaza. The 59-year-old man ran a Palestinian Authority-funded magazine. Palestinian officials said the killing came as a consequence of the breakdown in law and order, accelerated by frequent Israeli army raids which have crippled Palestinian security services. Speaking ahead of a Palestinian cabinet meeting in Ramallah and the West Bank, Palestinian Minister of Negotiations Saad Ariqat condemned the assassination and said security forces must bring an end to the chaos that is threatening the Palestinian struggle for independence. On the political front, Israeli Foreign Minister Silvan Shalom discussed the Middle East situation with British Prime Minister Tony Blair and Foreign Secretary Jack Straw. High on the agenda was Israel's construction of the controversial separation wall across the West Bank and the withdrawal of Jewish settlers from Gaza. Last week, the International Court of Justice in The Hague began hearing arguments over the legality of the barrier, which cuts across occupied Palestinian territory. Shalom said security was an essential prerequisite for all policies. He also said they would visit Egypt next week and Washington in 2 weeks' time. Shalom said Israel remained committed to the U.S.-backed roadmap for peace, but would pursue unilateral action, including construction of the controversial West Bank barrier in the absence of talks with the Palestinians. Britain has stated that the answer to the Palestinian-Israeli question was to make political progress, while at the same time addressing real security concerns.
From our point of view, we welcome any end to occupation in principle. What is crucial is the conditions in which that takes place, the security conditions and the political conditions, and our concern that any settlers transferred from Gaza should be resettled within the main part of Israel and not within the West Bank.
The UK's concern over settlements comes as new figures show that Israel's construction of new housing in Jewish settlements on occupied Palestinian territory rose 35% last year from the previous year. Israeli government statistics released today were the latest sign of Israel's continued expansion of settlements in the West Bank and Gaza Strip, despite the U.S.-backed peace plan that calls for a halt to such construction. The trend in settlement building also ran counter to a slump in overall Israeli housing starts, which fell 8% in 2003 to its lowest level in 14 years. The U.S.-backed roadmap to Palestinian statehood in the West Bank and Gaza requires that Israel freeze expansion of Jewish settlements. Moving to other news, and voters filed into polling stations across the United States early on Super Tuesday to cast ballots for Democratic Party presidential candidates. Democratic frontrunner John Kerry is looking for a coast-to-coast sweep that would knock rival John Edwards out of the race and set the stage for his nomination to challenge Republican President George W. Bush. Kerry is favored in all the 10 states of the Super Tuesday, the biggest day of voting in the race. But Edwards is hoping to spring a few upsets that could help keep him alive for at least another week. Capturing the attention of the race are big states like New York, California, Ohio, and Georgia, with a total of 1,151 delegates to July's Democratic Party nominating convention. More than half of the delegates needed to win, and the campaign's largest one-day haul. Kerry is keeping his eyes on a November matchup with Bush. He ignores Edwards on the campaign trail and focuses his attacks on the U.S. president's economic and foreign policy leadership. And still in other news, following the Haitian president's ouster and departure from the capital, Port-au-Prince, looting of food and medical supplies have raised serious concerns amidst international aid agencies. Cleanup efforts are underway as more U.S. Marines arrived as part of multinational security force. Rebels sought to consolidate their position, urging people to demonstrate support for them in the face of a power vacuum after the ouster of President Jean-Bertrand Aristide. Although people returned to work and the streets were crowded with vehicles, there was still occasional shooting and some looting in the Antarctic port area. The chaotic situation has halted the distribution of supplies, and international aid arriving through sea and airports is feared lost after armed rebels and former militia entered the city. The UN World Food Programme has been unable to distribute food in the north, but International Committee of the Red Cross said it had managed to get emergency supplies for 1,000 wounded at the Port-au-Prince airport.
In the wake of the bus explosion, ambulances and rescue units transported the injured to hospitals in the capital, including Hadassa, Sharat Sedek, and Bakur Halem. More than 60 people were transported to the hospitals, dozens were severely injured, and some were in dangerous condition. Hospital administrators announced that some of the people were in panic. The injured were spread out in surgery rooms and different medical centers. In Hadassa Hospital in Ain Karam, the number of injured has reached 25, 4 of whom are severely wounded. In Sharat Sedek Hospital, 20 injured people are being treated, 4 of whom are also severely wounded. In Bakur Halem Hospital, dozens of injured people receiving treatment are in critical condition.
People were laying on the ground and there was a lot of blood. I heard a lot of screaming. I have a 3.5-year-old son that we waited for 15 years. I wanted to understand how could he live without a father.
About 1.5 years ago, I lost my sister when bus number 32 exploded. Unfortunately, today I had to go through the same horrifying experience again. Once again, I'm in shock. My brother was injured in the explosion. However, this time he miraculously survived. We still have not recovered from the previous shock, yet we are going through a similar experience. The situation is very difficult. It is very difficult for me to describe it in words.
The Israeli Agid and Gan public bus companies started operating vehicles outfitted with special equipment to enable drivers to inspect passengers before they enter the bus. If the bus driver is suspicious of any person, he can prevent him from entering. In 2 months, all buses will be outfitted with technologically advanced equipment to detect explosive devices before passengers are able to board the buses. However, some bus drivers complained about the possibility that terrorists would be tempted to explode themselves at the entrance of the bus. They also complained because handicapped people will have difficulty getting onto buses.
The new equipment provides more safety. I think that in 2 months, the answers to many questions can be figured out. When the multiple detection equipment is installed, then explosives or the smell of chemicals weighing more than 1.5 kilograms can be detected. This will be a real solution.
You are asking me if I am afraid of this? Let me tell you, I know one thing. If we do not have this equipment, then the terrorist can enter the bus and explode himself in the middle. The mess and damage that will be caused in this case will be much larger than if the explosion happens outside the bus. Let me put it this way. God forbid if a terrorist operation happens while we are doing our jobs outside the bus, then only the passenger sitting next to me and I will be hurt. Therefore, the impact of the explosion will be less, not like what happened on bus number 14. If we were to do that, then we will have done our part.
This does not help. Passengers have to get into the bus. On every bus stop, about 20 passengers have to enter the bus. If this machine breaks on the road, then the bus and the traffic will be delayed. This does not stop the explosions from happening inside the bus. If someone wants to explode himself, he will do so anyway. If he cannot explode himself in the bus, then he will explode himself in a restaurant or a mall. Are you going to put this kind of machine at the entrance of malls and restaurants?
At this time, it makes me feel more secure. The equipment decreases my fear a little bit. I hope that the new equipment will work.
Are you afraid of using the bus for transportation?
Yes, I'm afraid, but what can I do? I just started a new job. I have to go out and work. I had 2 experiences with buses. Yesterday, my son was on the bus that exploded as he was on his way to the restaurant. However, my son got off the bus before it exploded. His friend that was sitting next to him died. When my son came home, he was very angry. I also feel the same.
2004 marked the 100th birthday of the Middle East superstar vocalist Umm Kulthum. The Moroccan music team organized a seminar on Arabic music in Casablanca to commemorate the occasion. During the seminar, people explored the richness and diversity of Kulthum's songs, which stand the test of time.
The Star of the East, the Queen of the Arabic song, the Nightingale of the Nile, all these titles belong to one lady, Kulthum. The Arab world is celebrating her 100th birthday.
Even now, in the 21st century, there is no voice like Kulthum's voice. Her vocal capacity was above what ordinary singers can deliver.
When Kulthum sang, people were enchanted. Her voice reflected the sadness and aspirations of ordinary Arabs from the Atlantic Ocean to the Arabian Gulf. With her extraordinary songs, she established herself as one of the most talented people of her time.
The meaning of the poetry that I sing helps me memorize the songs. This explains why I've never made a mistake, because I love the poetry that I sing.
Yes, people can imitate Kulthum, but it will never be the same.
Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, which promotes journalism excellence worldwide and invests in the vitality of 26 U.S. communities, and the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Additional support is provided by the Firedoll Foundation and Henry and Virgilia Dakin.